Tonight, you open your fridge, salmon, tuna, maybe cod. It feels like variety. It isn't. Right now, in the ocean, there are more than 20,000 known species of fish. 20,000. You've tasted maybe 5. Most people assume the rest just taste bad. That's not it. The real reason is stranger and darker. Part of it is written into the flesh of the fish. Part of it is written into your own body, and by the end of this, you won't look at a seafood counter the same way again. Let's start with chemistry. Some fish carry poison they didn't even make themselves. Barracuda and reef fish eat smaller fish. Those eat algae. Some of that algae carries a toxin called ciguatera. It moves up the food chain and concentrates. The bigger the fish, the more poison it holds. This is called biomagnification. Japanese researcher Takeshi Yasumoto traced this toxin through reef ecosystems for years. Through the 1970s and 80s, what he found was unsettling. Cooking doesn't destroy it. Freezing doesn't destroy it. Grill it, boil it, fry it. The poison stays exactly where it was. A fisherman catches a healthy-looking reef fish. No smell, no warning. His family eats well that night. By morning, their mouths go numb. Hot water feels ice cold. Cold water burns like fire. For some victims, that sensation lingers for months. Entire island communities learned which reef fish to avoid through painful trial and error, generation after generation, long before anyone had a scientific name for the toxin. An entire category of fish disappears from your plate before you ever know it existed. But ciguatera is just one poison among many. Pufferfish carry a toxin called tetrodotoxin, over 1,000 times more lethal than cyanide by weight. In Japan, chefs train for years and take licensing exams just to be allowed to prepare it as fugu, because one wrong cut near the liver or ovaries can kill a diner within hours. There is still no antidote. Entire species get written off completely, not because they taste bad, but because getting them wrong means someone dies. Now go deeper, past where sunlight reaches. Fish evolve a different survival trick entirely. Sharks, rays, and many deep-sea species carry high levels of urea in their flesh to help balance pressure and salt in extreme conditions. The side effect is that their meat can smell like ammonia, like a cleaning product left open in a small room. Left untreated, some of these fish become almost inedible within hours of being caught. Not poisonous, just repulsive. Your brain, wired by millions of years of evolution, links that smell directly to decay, to spoiled meat, to something that will make you sick. So you reject it instantly, without ever tasting it, without ever giving it a chance. Even something as strange as the oarfish, a massive, ribbon-like creature that can stretch over 30 feet and sometimes washes ashore, has been treated for centuries as an omen rather than a meal. In parts of Japan, it was historically called the messenger from the sea god's palace. Fishermen who found one on the beach didn't think dinner. They thought warning. That single chemical quirk, combined with pure appearance, has kept dozens of deep-sea species off dinner tables for centuries, no matter how safe some of them actually are to eat. But even that isn't the whole answer, because plenty of fish out there are perfectly safe, perfectly edible, and we still don't eat them. So what's really going on? Here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of what ends up on your plate was never actually chosen by you. It was chosen decades ago by an industry for reasons that had nothing to do with flavor. In the mid-1900s, commercial fishing fleets built entire supply chains around a handful of species: cod, tuna, salmon, herring. Why those four? Because they moved in large, predictable schools, which made them easy to locate and catch in bulk. Because they could survive the journey from ocean to processing plant without falling apart. Because their bone structure and body shape made filleting fast and cheap at industrial scale. There was also a colder, more practical reason behind the curtain. Early refrigeration and freezing technology in the 20th century was expensive and limited. Companies needed fish that could be caught in bulk, frozen in bulk, and sold in bulk, using the same machines, the same processing lines, the same packaging, every single time. One shape, one size, one process. A slippery, oddly shaped, low-yield fish simply wasn't worth retooling the machinery for, so the machinery quietly decided the menu. decades before you were born. Fish that swim alone, or live in small, unpredictable numbers, were never worth the cost of catching them commercially. It didn't matter how they tasted, it mattered how efficiently they could be turned into profit. Marine biologist Daniel Pauly has spent decades studying this exact pattern. He calls part of it fishing down the food web, meaning the industry hunted the big, easy, profitable species first, and then kept hunting them generation after generation, even as the numbers kept dropping. A landmark 2003 study by researchers Ransom Myers and Boris Worm estimated that industrial fishing had wiped out roughly 90% of large predatory fish populations since the mid-20th century. 90% gone in less than 100 years, and instead of diversifying into the thousands of untouched species swimming right below the surface, the industry doubled down on farming the same few winners: salmon farms, tilapia farms, shrimp farms, the same handful of names, mass-produced and shipped to every corner of the world. Meanwhile, an entire ocean of alternatives sits almost completely ignored, not because it's inferior, but because it was never profitable enough to bother with. But there's a second reason, and this one has nothing to do with the ocean at all. It's about you. Your brain has strict, mostly unconscious rules about what counts as food. Psychologist Paul Rosen spent years studying disgust, and one finding kept repeating itself. Humans don't just reject things that are actually dangerous, we reject things that simply look wrong. A fish with too many spines. A fish with strange, unfamiliar eyes. A shape that doesn't match the smooth, salmon-shaped template your brain quietly built over a lifetime of supermarket visits and restaurant menus. Take the blobfish. Perfectly edible in theory. Almost nobody wants it on their plate because it triggers an instinctive no before a single fact is even considered. It doesn't matter that it's safe. It doesn't matter that somewhere it could be a perfectly good meal. The shape alone shuts the door. This isn't really about taste, it's about pattern recognition, built over a lifetime of only ever seeing 5 or 6 acceptable fish shapes over and over. In every store, on every menu, you were never given the full menu. You were given a narrowed one, and your brain quietly adapted to think that narrow list was the entire ocean. So here's what's actually happening every single time you order fish. You're not really tasting the ocean. You're tasting a business decision made generations before you were born. You're tasting a poison avoidance instinct written into your biology over millions of years. And you're tasting a disgust reflex trained not by nature, but by supermarkets and marketing. 3 separate forces, chemistry, industry, and psychology, quietly agreed to shrink an entire ocean down to a handful of shapes on a plate. Here's the twist though, that template can change. 50 years ago, raw fish on a plate would have disgusted most Western diners outright. The idea alone was enough to turn people away. Then, sushi arrived, carefully marketed, beautifully presented, stripped of anything that looked too fishy or too raw, and an entire culture's disgust threshold quietly shifted within a single generation. What was once unthinkable became a weekly order, which means the ocean of fish you refuse to eat isn't fixed. It was built piece by piece, decision by decision, and anything that was built can be rebuilt. Most people go their whole lives never noticing the other 20,000 possibilities swimming past, completely untouched, completely unconsidered. So think about that. Next time you order the same fish again, it isn't really a choice, it's an inheritance, one you never signed up for and rarely think to question. The ocean offered you thousands of options. Somewhere along the way, something else quietly decided which ones counted.